Okay, so let's go back here. So Zok Gemara, Masnisin the loy Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. This Mishnah will not be consistent with Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. The Mishnah that says that rice and millet, oyrus v'doichen, are not grains that could become chametz, and therefore are not grains that you could make matzah out of, that's not consistent with Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. To Omar, he said, oyrus min daganhu. Oyrus is a proper grain, v'chayovin al chimutze kares. And in fact, you will be chayiv kares, deraisa, for eating grain, rice, and millet that became chametzdik. But the Gemara called sirchan. The Tanya Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri.
But he doesn't mention doichen.
You're right. He only says iris. Thank you for pointing that out. You are right. It says iris only. That's right. Iris min davinu v'chayavin al chimutze kares. And you chayav kares for rice. The Tanya Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri oiser be'iris v'doichen. He asers iris v'doichen. And Rashi says what Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri was talking about is he says you're not allowed to cook with rice or doichen. I guess Ramosh, from here we might have a raya. So let's stay tuned. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri said
the fact you could use something for the Seder night doesn't necessarily mean that, like, we don't use ours with doichen either.
Right. So let's finish this shtickle, and then we'll go back to analyze. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says oiser b'oiris v'doichen. The Rashi in his first drop, which Rashi likes, says generally you shouldn't cook at all on Pesach with oiris v'doichen. Don't cook with them at all. Why? So the pshat in this is because it becomes chametz very quickly, and it's just playing with fire. It's too dangerous because it might become chametz quickly, and then you have chametz on your hands. But the Gemara wasn't so sure that my pshat is right. Iboilu. The Gemara wants to know what did Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri mean when he said you shouldn't cook with oiris and doichen because it's karv lachmetz. Did he mean shekarv lahachmetz, meaning the kadem machmetz, that it's very dangerous? It could become chametz very quickly before you will think, before you will notice, and now you have an iser deraisa on your hands. Oy Dilma, maybe what he meant was karv lahachmetz hava chametz gomer loy hava. Maybe what he meant to say is it looks like chametz, but it's not really chametz. So what did he mean? Did he mean that it's a good grain and you can use it for matzah and midaraisa there's initial chametz on it, or did he mean it's not really chametz and therefore you wouldn't be able to use it for the matzah? Tashma, we have a riot. The Tanya Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, oiris min daganhu v'chayovin al chimutze kares. You'll be chayav kares if the oiris became chametzik. The adam yoytzi bo yidei chayvasei b'Pesach, and you're allowed to make matzah out of oiris. The Chen Hoyer Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri Omer. Okay, that's weiter. So I'll call upon him. What we have here is we have a chlor raya that Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri disagrees with our Mishnah and holds that oiris, at least oiris, is a deraisa. It becomes chametzik, and therefore you could make matzah out of rice. Imagine eating rice cakes for your mitzvah of matzah. But it's funny because it only says doichen over here. The
Sfardim meat rice. The Sfardim meat rice.
The Sfardim meat rice because they don't pass like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri.
Not all Sfardim.
What about
I don't eat rice.
Oh, you don't eat rice?
No, my parents don't either.
Well, let me ask you a question. Is it easy to find kosher or Pesach products without rice?
In Eretz Yisrael, not in North America.
Dave has the worst of everything. A month of slichos and no rice on Pesach.
Look at that.
What can you do? We must hold like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri.
Yeah, but they take showers during the 9 days.
This is true. It's true.
Okay, so Gemara, Iboilahu. Shakarav lahakmat. Oh, we did it already. So we had this halach already. So you see clear. It's mashma. It's oris and doichen because the brisa that quotes Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri is talking about oris v'doichen. So it's mashma that they both have the same status, but it doesn't say so beferish. So a couple of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri at least by oris, it's a min daganu and it's chayiv midaraisa, and you can make your matzah out of it, which is not like our Mishnah who holds that oris v'doichen are not really grains. That karmis is also a type of grain. Chayeves b'chala. Rashi tells us that in order to be chayev on challah, it's linked to lechem, which we learned from lechem oini. So when something is chayev in challah, by definition, you'll also be able to be mekayim the mitzvah of matzah with it. So he said karmis is chayeves b'chala. My karmis, Moish Stern, am I pronouncing it karmis properly? or does it have is it pronounced differently? I don't want to pronounce it wrong.
It's karamis.
It's karamis. Okay, thank you. So karamis is chayv v'chala. It's a proper grain. My karamis. Rabbi, everybody knows what karamis is. It's shitznisa. For Gemara, what if I don't know what shitznisa is? My shitznisa. Amar Papa, shitznisa de mishtakra beni kalnisa. It's the shitznisa that you find growing amongst the kalnisa. So now for sure, everybody got to know what it is. It grows right near heroin. It grows near the heroin plants. So for sure, the Taliban know exactly what this is. In Afghanistan, they probably have a lot of shitznisa. They probably
isn't poppy opium?
Oh, so it's not heroin?
It's
I don't
opium.
know. I'm sorry. I don't know.
First you start with opium, and then
you make a heroin out of opium.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
Yossi, you're not in the know of how to make drugs.
Where did they learn all this?
Weiter in the Gemara.
He's from the 60s. You have to grow up in the 60s.
That's right.
Recorded, that's what we've said enough.
Zog the other Gemara back. Amar Rabbi B'chaim Rish Lakish. Isa sheni loisha b'yayin v'shemen udvash. And Rashi says this is dough that had no water in it at all. You used exclusively yayin, shemen, and dvash. Ein chayovin al chimitzu kares. You will not be chayiv kares for it because it cannot become chometz if it's made out of yayin, shemen, and dvash. I shouldn't have said that because that's the maskana of the Gemara. Yosef Rav Papa. This is a beautiful story. Yosef Rav Papa Rav Huna Bared Rav Yeshua Kamed Rav Idi Barav. Two Talmidim, they were colleagues in class. Rav Papa and Rav Huna Bared Rav Yeshua. They were in class, and who was the Rebbe? Rav Idi Baravin. The Yosef Rav Idi Baravin the Kamen Amdim, and the Rebbe fell asleep. I could only imagine the horror and the terror that we would inflict on our Rebbe if he actually fell asleep in class in front of us. Now, there was only one Rebbe who was at Tzaddik Yisod Olam, and he taught me in grade 1, and he taught my youngest son in grade 1. And he taught, I think, 4 generations of grade 1 children, and his name was Rabbi Yakubovich Atzal. And he died in his late 90s, and he taught till the very, very end. And at the end of his life, when he taught my youngest son, he would actually take a nap in class, and the kids would sit there like little tatalach and not make a peep that they shouldn't wake up the Rebbe. In my days, we would definitely not have been so kind. We would have shredded.
I had Rebbeim half the age that took a nap in class.
So, Amalei Rav Huna, Bared Rav Yeshua Rav Papa. So they didn't shoot spitballs and they didn't start fighting with each other. Rav Huna Bared Yeshua leans over to Rav Papa and says, "Psst, Rav Papa, my time with the Reish Lakish. Why do you think Reish Lakish said that Isa Sheni Loshe v'Yayin Semed Dvash? Why do you think he said Ein Chayav Al Chimutz Kares?" Amalei, Rav Papa said, "I'll tell you why. The Amar Kra, the pasuk says Lo Soichel Olav Chametz Shiva Sham Teichel of Matzah." You see their link. Dvarim Sh'Adam Yoytze Ben Yidei Chavasei B'Matzah Chayovin Al Chimutz Kares. Anything that you could be Yoytze Matzah with, you'll be chayiv on its chametz kares. Vaha, this dough that was made with yayin, shemen, and dvash, since this does not qualify as lechem, logic would dictate that ein chayovin al chimutz kares. So this is all going on in a whisper as the Rebbe is sleeping, or at least they thought so. And he said, how could you say that? Because if you take chametz and you dissolve it in water and you swallow it, if it's chametz onish kares, you're chayav kares. But v'matzahu ein adam yoytze b'yidei chavasei. Ein adam yoytze b'yidei chavasei b'Pesach. So you see that the two aren't linked to each other. The hacha the ein adam yoytze b'yidei chavasei b'matzah. Here you're not yoytze yechiv b'matzah, just like the yayin shemen dvash. But v'chayav nachimutze kares. So who said that would be a good reason to explain why you're not chayav al chimutz kares? So what happened? All the commotion back and forth, tumbling and learning. Isar Bahu Ravidi Bar Avin. Ravidi Bar Avin woke up. The Rebbe woke up. He heard the conversation in class. Amalu, he said, without skipping a beat. He didn't ask them, could you tell me what you're talking about? He didn't say that. He just, without skipping a beat, said, Dardiki, Kindalach. Hainu Tami de Rish Lakish. You know why Rish Lakish said that the dough that was nilosh with yayin shemen and dvash is not chametz? Meperis do not make things chametz. And Tosfos brings down, and Rashi brings down, that means it's not chametz to be chayiv kares, but there would still be an iser lav. And Tosfos says there are those who learn that there's not an iser lav, but if you mix it with water, a vada would be an iser kares. And everybody agrees if you put in meperis, but you also add water, there's for sure an iser kares. So you see a fascinating thing. How a yid like Ravidi Baravin, even in his sleep, he was registering and his mind was working. He was able to answer a question without missing a beat. So I want to share.
But the Gemara, I can't understand. The Gemara finishes with 2 dots after it.
Right.
May Paris a machmitzim, period, dot, period.
That's right.
That means that you're not chayiv chametz on it.
If it's not chayiv kares, I know it's chayiv kares, but he does say there is a lav, according to some shitas. But it's interesting as a guy sleeping and a lichten learning. I want to share with you an off-the-chart story that I heard over at the Satmar Rebbe, and is blown away as I was by the Satmar Rebbe. I'm even more blown away by the person who figured this out. And I'll tell you what it was. The Satmar Rebbe never slept. He's the only Rebbe that went to sleep Friday night, because he's the only Rebbe that didn't sleep a whole week. As a matter of fact, every morning he would stand by his window, and they used to fill the buses of the children going to Cheder in front of his house. So he used to stand there shopping nachas as all the Satmar children were getting on the school buses. And Sunday morning, he would be standing there looking out the window with his shtaram al-beketche, meaning he hadn't went to sleep. He never slept. Because of that, often when he was in places, meetings, he was sleeping, or at least that's what it looked like. So once upon a time, there was a meeting where a big Rav was horribly disrespected. He said he made a psak. I don't know what the psak was related to, and certain people were terribly chutzpahdik, and they made fun of him, and the Rabbanim were getting together because they needed to make a macha that you're not allowed to be mavaza this Talmid Chacham, and they were going to write a koil koiri, and the koil koiri that they wrote, they wanted to write on it that this Yid is a big Talmid Chacham, the Elof Tishmuon, and you should listen to him. And the discussion broke out, and while this discussion is happening, the Satmar Rebbe is like sleeping. The discussion broke out amongst the Rabbanim. Is it appropriate to use the words the Elof Tishmon when you're talking about a mere mortal Rav? Because where does it say it in the Torah? It says Navi Mikirbecha Me'achecha Kamoicha Yokim. The Torah is speaking about a Navi, and then the Torah says Elof Tishmon. So the pasuk of the Elof Tishmon, you should listen to him, was referring to a Navi. So the question is it appropriate to write Ve'elef Tishmon talking about just a regular Rav? Maybe it's not appropriate. And there's all discussion going on. And all of a sudden, the Satmar Rebbe, half asleep, says, Kiva Eiger Rizal. So he's in his sleep. He didn't know what he was talking about. And one of the Rabbanim jumped up and said, wow! And let me show you this. This will mamish blow your mind. Oh, the Rebbe said, half asleep, Kiva Eiger Rizal. Let's look at this halacha. Dina Kedusha. Ein HaTzibur Oimim, the Mechaber says that the Tzibur does not say im shatz naktishach, eleshoiskin umechavnin lema sheshliach Tzibur Oimer. We don't say anything ad shemegil kedusha v'az oinim HaTzibur kadosh. So the Mechaber says that we don't say naktishach or nekadosh, only the shliach Tzibur says it, and we say kadosh kadosh. Zok Rabbi Akiva Eiger, that's not our minig, right? Our minig is to say naktishach. The Zok Rabbi Akiva Eiger, this is unbelievable. Mamish blows you away. Ein HaTzibur. Avo bekisvei harari kosav the yesh loimer kol hakadusha imashatz mila b'mila. The Arizal says that we're supposed to say naktisha, which is what we do. Ad kan l'shoinoi ve'elav tishmon Nazir Shimshon. So Rabbi Akiva Eiger quoted a Nazir Shimshon that quotes the Arizal as paskening like the Nazir Shimshon is paskening like the Arizal saying Moshe Kedusha, and he says ve'elav tishmon. Now the Satmar Rebbe in his sleep was able to have that on his mind, and the Talmid Chacham who chapped what the Satmar Rebbe was talking about is just as impressive. But in his sleep he threw this out. So there are those who answered that this is not a raya, because ve'elav tishmon might be an appropriate word a phrase to refer to the Arizal, but that still doesn't justify using it on a regular Rav in the days of the Satmar Rebbe. But I'll call upon him. This is unbelievable. So the Satmar Rebbe learned from Rabbi Bar Avid, and even in his sleep, he was able to remember Rabbi Akiva Eiger he learned, and it's not even part of the relevant text of Rabbi Akiva Eiger. It happens to just be a comment on the halacha, but it's not even relevant to the halacha. So I'm pretty blown away how clear the Satmar Rebbe knew every Rabbi Akiva Eiger in Shulchan Aruch.
The Satmar Rebbe said something else. You don't understand what the Satmar Rebbe said. The Satmar Rebbe said, "Azoivi mituni tugen ve'elef tishman." Es belangt taka zu a novi, aber es katni a doiris, and every door has its manig that you should listen to.
Wow.
That's what he meant.
Wow. So you heard the story before?
No, I didn't, but that's
you're vertaiching
it. That's what I'm. That's the way I.
That's what you're vertaiching it. Okay, beautiful. Beautiful. Okay, let's see the Gemara.
Every door has its manig that you have to be able to pick one.
Yeah. Zok the more about the yoytze with my b'maiser. Your yoytze, the mitzvah of matzah, if you ate the mai or if you ate maiser. Correct the Gemara. The mai. How could you say the mai? Haloi chazerlei. It's not royal. And Rashi says two reasons. But one of the reasons Rashi says is havela mitzvah b'aveira. It's a mitzvah b'aveira. So this is a chiddush because the mai is only an issue derabbanan, and you see from Rashi that he holds that even aveira derabbanan would be called a mitzvah b'aveira. So you would say you're not allowed to do a mitzvah deraisa if it's going to violate a mitzvah derabbanan. Even that's called a mitzvah b'aveira. I guess because the Rishonim speak about it. So sometimes say it's because of the pasuk which says leisaser. There's a deraisa that says you always have to listen to the rabbanon. But frankly, you're not allowed to eat the mai. Zok Gemara, it's not true. A poor person is allowed to eat the mai. So kivin the boy mafkir l'nichse. Since anybody could be mafkir all of his nechasim at any time, have a ani, and that would make him into ani. The oichel the mai, and he's allowed to eat the mai. Therefore, hashtanami, even though he wasn't mafkir it, chazile, he can still use the demai for his matzah. So Rashi, the chomer derabbanon ba'amahu, the roiv amay arsh mashmeh. Since it's only chomer derabbanon, and anyway, if he was an ani, he could use it. Therefore, we let him use it for his matzah. Titnan machilon esaniyim demai. You're allowed to serve poor people demai. Vesachsanya demai, and you can serve an achsanya demai. Achsanya doesn't mean a social guest that you invite to your home. Rajas, it means they were Jewish soldiers that their accommodations, their room and board, were forced upon the population. They're called aniyim, and they're the people that are you could serve them demai. Toshu says it's speaking about goyish soldiers. Varmavuna, Tana Beishamay Arvim, Ein Machilon is Haniyim demai, Vesachsani demai, Vesil Arvim Machilon. So Toshu has a very nice little interesting shot on the demai. So let's look at Toshu. The super Kri, the Ri was unsure. He boil a memer yoytze dafke b'di'evet. Does it mean yoytze b'demai? You're not supposed to look at chila use demai for matzah. If you did, you yoytze the mitzvah. Kadermin hoyel umafkir l'nichse v'chazilei. Since he could be mafkir his nechasim, and then he's an ani, and then he's allowed to eat demai. The fact is, he's not being mafkir his nechasim, and we're still letting him eat. So maybe it only means b'di'evet. But here's the beautiful pshat. Inami of Tosfos, yoytzen af lechatchila. You yoytzen lechatchila to eat this demai as your matzah. Hoyel v'shori le'aniyim. Since aniyim are allowed to eat demai, v'achilas matzah nami nikra achilas aniyas. It's lechem oini. So since it's lechem oini, it passes that you should be able to eat it out of demai, which is a Michael that's only for aniyim. So that was the chap. Chap is that it's lechem oini, so you're allowed to eat demai because it's for an ani.
Not if you're paying $25 a pound.
Well, then you're for sure an ani.
Yeah. You become
$25 a pound. We're pushing 30 now already.
Right.
Can you imagine this year what matzah is going to cost? They're going to say because of COVID, it's $60 a pound. Who knows? And they're going to all be individually wrapped. And then they'll say on it cheese, chocolate, or cherry. Zok to Gemara weiter. Meiser Rishon should not let trumasai. Pshita frek Gemara. The kivin should not let trumasai chulun happen. This is regular chulun. What is the chiddush of the Mishnah? Zok to Gemara like shricha. Shektilu b'shabam. So let's stop here a second. Normally, at what point is the chiyuv to take off trumas and ma'asers triggered? It's when everything's already back in your main storage house. It came into the front door, and it's ready to be stored. there is no chiyuv yet of truma ma'aser b'daraisa back when it's still in stocks, right? We're still in a premature stage. Now, what is the normal pecking order? Let's say your harvest was 100 bushels. So what would normally happen is first you give truma. Truma for our Benini is 1/50th. So you would give 2 bushels to the kohen. Now you're left with 98 bushels. You have to give ma'aser to the Levi. So the Levi will get 9.8 bushels. So you give the Levi 9.8 bushels, and then the Levi has to take off a tenth of his. So a tenth of 9.8 bushels is 0.98 bushels. So almost 1 bushel the Levi will have to give to the kohen. But here the Levi didn't want to take meiser of 98 bushels. He wanted to take meiser of 100 bushels. So he quickly came to the field when it was still b'shibolim, and he took 10%. So he got a full 10 bushels instead of 9.8 bushels. So Zok Gemara Lachricha Shekdima b'shibolim, but not leimenu trumas meiser. So he took his 10 bushels because he got all 10 bushels, and he took off from those 10 bushels 1 bushel, which is his trumas meiser, and he gave the kohen his bushel. But not lahimenu truma gedola. But he didn't give the kohen his share of those 2 bushels, which he didn't give the kohen his share of the extra 2 bushels that he took meiser of. So maybe he owes the kohen that as well, is the kohen's share of the truma gedola, which really should have been taken off the top before the Levi took his 10%. The halach is he doesn't have to. And our mission is following the shita of Rabbi Vo. If the lady went and chapped his meiser before the kohen had a chance to take his truma, poter mit truma gedola. He does not have to take truma gedola. He still has to take his trumas meiser, but he doesn't have to take the truma gedola off of what he took. Shenemar, we learned it from a pasuk. It says, "V'rei moisem imenu truma lashem meiser min meiser." All you have to take off from your share, Mr. Levi, is meiser min meiser. And we darshan meiser min meiser matilach v'loy truma gedola trumas meiser min meiser. You only have to take off trumas meiser, but not truma gedola and trumas meiser. So therefore, our mission is telling you a chiddush. Meiser rishon should not the trumasai, but it's talking about meiser rishon where the Levi chapped it early. So he chapped away. He didn't, I don't think he defrauded, but he took away some extra meiser that really was entitled to the kohen. Our mission is saying that's not an issue, and he could still make matzah out of his grain, and he doesn't have to give trumas meiser. I'm sorry, he doesn't have to give truma gedola. So, just to be perfectly clear, if we want to touch the words of the Mishnah, when it says meiser rishon shenatu trumasai, it means you took off the trumas meiser, but you didn't take off the truma gedola. Okay, if you're telling me that the Levi can chap his share before the kohen without any repercussion, without any penalty, well then afilu akdimu b'kri nami lifter. Why did he have to go so early and take from shibolim? What if already the wheat is processed already and it's grain? Why don't we say the same thing? That if he took his share early, he is pater from giving truma gedola because of the same pasuk that you only have to give trumas meiser and not two. Amar lei. So Abai told Rav Papa, "This is your lucky day. Hashem was thinking about you, and because of your kasha, Hashem said another pasuk in the Torah. Olech Amar Kra, Mikol matnoseichem tarimu es kol trumas Hashem. From all of your matanos, you have to take off all of the trumas. So you have again contradictory psukim. One pasuk says that the Levi only has to give one thing to the kohen, and one pasuk says you have to give everything to the kohen. So we're going to say when the Levi took the meiser, when it was still b'shibolim, then he only has to give one thing to the kohen, the trumas meiser. But if he came late in the game when it was already grain, it's already kernels, then he has to give two matanos to the kohen, the trumas meiser and the truma gedola. Fekimo marois. Who's that to apply the psukim that way? Maybe say the opposite. Maybe if he took it from the shibolim, he has to give truma gedola, and if he take it when it was grain, then he only has to give one truma. No, it's logical to say that since it's much more along in the processing, it's already in grain form. There, the svar is that the kohen should have more of a tfisa in it, and therefore when it's in grain form, the Levi, even though he took his Meiser before the Kohen took his Truma, the Levi would still have to pay back the Kohen for the Truma Gedola that he was missing. But if the Levi came earlier, he wouldn't have. Zok the Mishnah Baiter. Meiser Sheni v'hektish sheniftu. Pshita. If you were Poida, the Meiser Sheni, and you were Poida hektish, it's Chulun. Zok Timar Hachal Maiskinon Shenosan as a Karen V'leinosan as a Chodesh. The rule is when you're Poida hektish that you made, you don't have to give its value only. You have to add 20% premium. The same thing with Meiser Sheni. So what if you were Poided, but you didn't pay the premium? Does that disqualify your pigeon? Or your pigeon is still good, but you still owe Hektish the money. You still owe Meiser Sheni the money. The Kamash Malon Ein Chaimish Ma'akiv. Our Mish is teaching us that even though you didn't give the Chaimish, your pigeon still is good. Now that doesn't mean you don't owe the money. You still owe the money, but your pigeon is good, and therefore you'd be able to make matzah out of this. Pshita. Why shouldn't the Kohanim be able to use the challah that they got or truma that they got for matzah? Maybe the matzah has to be matzah that anybody could eat. And if they make it out of truma or challah, how are they going to say kol ditzrich yesev yifsach, kol dichlin yesev yechal? If a Yisrael came, he couldn't serve him this bread. Kamash malam matzah riba. It says matzah twice in the pasuk, and the Gemara uses this over and over again to include many situations under the chiyuv of matzah. So the pasuk says in one place it says shivas yamim toichel olav matzah is lachamayni, and then on Amar Aleph it says another pasuk it says kol machmetzes loisechelu b'chol moshveisechem toichelu matzahs. So since it says matzah many times, it's inclusive of even a matzah that's only good for the kohen to eat, even though a Yisrael cannot eat it. Avaloi b'tevel, you cannot use tevel. Pshita, of course you can't use tevel. So tomorrow letzricha b'tevel tavel midrabanan. If it's tevel only midrabanan, what's an example? Hydroponics. If you planted grain in a flower pot that had no holes, which means it didn't nourish at all from the ground, midaraisa there's no chiyuv truma on those things, but midarabanan there is. So the chiddush is even if you have tevel that's only tevel midarabanan, that's not allowed to be used for your matzahs. And Rashi says, again, because it's a mitzvah abba b'aveira. And again, you have a raya that even though it's only a derabanan, you still say the problem of mitzvah abba b'aveira. See, Rashi says, Tavol b'derabanan, mafilochi mitzvah abba b'aveira hi chashuv lo, v'ledami l'dmayim, so he goes on. But Akol Banan, Rashi is telling us that a mitzvah abba b'aveira even applies to an isser derabanan. Zok t'mar vayter. So let's think back for a second. Last time, when we said the Meiser Rishon Shenat La Trumasai, we touched that Trumasai as meaning Trumas Meiser. Here, the Gemara is not going to learn that way. So let's see what it says. Pshita, it's pashut if you didn't take off the Trumas Meiser, it's Teva. The Levi is not allowed to eat it. Of course, he can't use that for his matzah. So we're talking about Truma Gedola, not Trumas Meiser. And it's speaking in a case where the Levi went and chapped his Meiser before the Kohen had a chance to chop his Truma. But he came late in the game when it was already in grain. Now, you might think that Rav Papa's question to Abaye was that even if Dimu B'Kri Nami Lifter should also be potter from Truma Gedola, and Abaye answered back, Alechem Akra, we have a pasuk that says you have to give both trumas, which we apply to Ukdimei B'Kri. And that's exactly what the Gemara says. Who asked that you should not have to give the Truma Gedola. Abaye answered back that you have another pasuk that says you have to give Truma Gedola, and we say the two pasukim are contradictory. One applies to when the Levi came early when it was B'Shibalim. There the Levi doesn't have to give Truma Gedola, but when the Levi only took it B'Kri, then he has to give the Truma Gedola. And that's what the Gemara is saying. So come to Reish over here, when it says Shalenata Trumasai, it means Truma Gedola. Last time when it says Shanata Trumasai, it means Trumas Meiser. Zok the Gemara Vayter. The Levi Meiser Sheni back to Shalom Niftu. Pshita, if you weren't pointed, of course you can't use it for your matzahs. So really speaking, where you did redeem it, Umay Lo Niftu. What does the Tana over here mean when he says you weren't pointed? What he means is Shalom Niftu Kel Chasim. You didn't redeem it properly. What does that mean? Meiser Sheni Shapadi Al Gav Asiman. Meiser Sheni, you used a round piece of silver, but it didn't have the stamp of a coin on it. The Rachman number, the pasuk says, "V'tzarta kesef." The only thing that you are allowed to use to redeem Ma'aser Sheni is a coin that has a proper mint. But if it's just a flat piece of metal without a mint on it, without a form on it, you're not allowed to use that for Ma'aser. So if you were part of your Ma'aser with this, that Ma'aser you would not be able to use for your matzahs. Of course, this is Ma'aser Sheni out of Yerushalayim. The Hektish, how could you improperly be part of Hektish? You were parted with karka. So you cannot be part of Hektish with karka. So interesting here, as an aside in Maseches Pesachim, the Tana is teaching us halachas about pidyon Hektish and pidyon Ma'aser Sheni. Tana Rabbanan. You might think that you could be yotze the mitzvah matzah with tevel that you haven't yet taken off trumas and maishos. So before we even get into the conversation, the Brisa interjects with the kasha. What do you mean tevel that you weren't misaken yet? Kol tevel nami hala niskan. Isn't that what tevel is by definition? That you have not yet been misaken it? So what do you mean tevel that you weren't misaken it? Ella, what the Brisa means is a little bit tevel shalai niskan called tzarchay. Tevel that you didn't do all of the tikkunim you need to do with it. You only did part of the tikkunim. For instance, should not let me in truma gedayla. You took truma, but for not let me in truma's meiser, or you didn't take off meiser risha, or you didn't take off meiser sheni, v'loy meiser sheni. Afilu meiser ani. Maybe you didn't take off meiser ani. So you didn't completely finish all of the necessary afroshes. Minayin, how do you know that also you're not allowed to use for your matzahs? Talmud learner loy soichel al chametz. When it says the chiv matzah is on something that has an isur chametz on it. Misha isura mishum bal toichel olav chametz. The only type of isur that you can have on your products are an isur chametz if it became chametz. Yachazeh would exclude all of these things that are tevel. She'eni isura mishum bal toichel chametz el mishum bal toichel tevel. All of these things, even if they became chametz, they would not have an isur chametz. They only have an isur tevel. Frankly, Gemara, the isur the chametz lechan ozla. Why? Why would there not be an isur of chametz? Just because they're tevel, that means they're exempt from chametz? Of course they have an isur chametz. Reb Sheshes, Hamani Reb Shimon, the Amar in isur chalal isur. Reb Shimon holds that one isur can't follow another isur. This was tevel before Pesach. It was tevel before it became chametz. So therefore, since there's already isur tevel on this produce, the isur chametz will not be chal on this produce. So therefore, you have a limit in the Torah. You're only allowed to eat matzahs from things that would have an isur chametz if they were chametz. But since these tevel would never have an isur chametz, therefore you cannot make matzah out of them. The Tanya Reb Shimon Omer, ha'oichel nevela b'yom Kippur. If someone eats a nevela on Yom Kippur, now we're talking about a nevela that was a nevela before Yom Kippur, so it was already asur b'achili before Yom Kippur, and now you ate it on Yom Kippur. Potter, you're potter. Why? Because ein isur chalal isur. The isur nevela is there already. The isur Yom Kippur will not be chal on the isur of nevela. Ravina Amar afilu temu rabbanon. Even if you don't like rabbanon that isur chalal isur, it still makes sense to explain why you can't use tevel for matzah, because we darshan as follows: Misha Yisure Mishum Bal Teichel Chametz Bilvad. When it says a circle of chametz, we darshan something that would only have the isur chametz on it is something that if you made it into matzah, you'd be able to use as matzah. Yatzezeh, which excludes tevel, Sheini Yisure Mishum Bal Teichel Chametz Bilvad El Af Mishum Bal Teichel Tevel. This would have in addition to the isur chametz, it would also have the isur tevel. Therefore, you're not allowed to use it for matzah. Frankly, that's not what the pasuk says. Midei bilvad ksiv. It doesn't say bilvad in the pasuk, so you can't say that. So you have to say like Reb Sheshes that we're going according to Reb Shimon that ein isur chalal isur, and if you hold ein isur chalal isur, then these items of tevel you cannot use for matzah because they don't have the isur chametz on them at all. They only have the isur tevel. And I guess we could stop here.
Shkoyach.
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 Tomorrow 9 o'clock.
Mitch, you said tomorrow at 7.